Hi, welcome to Off Script Film Review. I'm Zach Lewis.
And I'm Dr. Draper.
Today on the show, we're taking a look at Ty West's Pearl. The horror follow-up to X from earlier this year is out in theaters. We went and saw it. We're going to tell you what we thought. We're also going to take a look at See How They Run, a 1950s whodunit from a up-and-coming film director, I think. Guy's done a lot of TV, writer who's done a lot of TV. This is their first jump to film. We're going to get into it. We're going to take a look at a couple trailers, some exciting things coming out. And before we get to all of it, we need to talk about the news. Our first story this week, The People's Joker, pulled from Toronto International Film Festival over rights issues. The People's Joker is a unique little movie. I just watched the trailer seconds before we started this podcast, and we'd show it to you if you're watching on Facebook Live, but we'll probably catch a copyright flag. Although rights issues are part of the reason this movie isn't at Toronto International Film Festival anymore, funnily enough. Andy, what is The People's Joker? What is this movie?
So this is a really bizarre film by filmmaker Vera Drew that has kind of taken on this film herself, and it's really bizarre. And this is like the Joker, like the DC Joker, using characters from DC like Batman and others, places like Gotham City. And it's a very kind of progressive film about a person who becomes the Joker, but that is having a gender identity issue, and this is played by Vera Drew herself, and they fight a caped crusader that's also a fascist in Gotham City. You can't make this stuff up. This movie looks terrible. Like I watched I only got through like half the trailer because it's the most student made looking thing I've seen in a long time, and I don't even know how this got into the Toronto Film Festival because it's just so laughably bad. But what's even more bizarre is that they thought that they would be able to just play this and not have DC come knocking down their door because they're using, very clearly copywritten characters.
So there are certain like low budget films I think that like can be seen as uniquely like auteur and doing something different in the space, and sometimes those movies will break into a festival like the Toronto International Film Festival. Last year we saw movies like Greener Grass, or there was one that came to the Texas theater. It's called Strawberry Mansions, with the same kind of look like this, like really low budget, but it's like done on purpose as like an attempt for an artist to like express themselves in the best way they can. And sometimes like some of the best cinema can come from moments like that. And I think that's how People's Joker got into this this year's film festival. Watching the trailer, like it very clearly is leaping over a number of sharks. It looks like it's almost all shot on green screen. It's super low budget, and the trailer like very proudly and loudly claims that this is a completely unauthorized feature from Detective Comics, Warner Brothers, and anyone that may claim ownership over the trademark therein. I mean, it says it right there. Like this is an illegal comic book movie. It says it in there, and I think that adds a little bit of a little bit pizzazz, a little bit of draw. Like maybe Toronto National Film Festival thought that might be cool, and then clearly like somebody actually watched the thing, or at least looked at the trailer, which again very proudly and very boldly says this is unauthorized, we don't have the rights to use any of this, and maybe they ran that by Warner Brothers, and Warner was like, what's that movie? Absolutely not. There's no way you're running it. I mean that's my best guess anyway.
Yeah, so now things that are parodies kind of fall under fair use, and you can make like the music of Weird Al Yankovic is exactly that. If you are making a bona fide parody, you have the right to kind of reuse another person's work. This could maybe fall under that, and it reminds me of the if you're familiar with the YouTube channel Meat Canyon, they got into it with Warner Brothers over a kind of dark sketch that they had done about Bugs Bunny, and Warner Brothers essentially had to buy it from them or buy it off them to claim that this was their property, and I'm sure a check was cut to basically buy it and get it off the internet. So maybe that's the strategy here, to make this thing that's like cringy and terrible, and hope Warner Brothers will pull it and cut them a check to make it go away.
Yeah, it looks like this movie is made by an artist. All right, like better or worse, this is the art that they make. Vera Drew like clearly put a lot of work into this. They did, it's not a YouTube video. Like there's some effort made in this feature, even if it is not quite as big and grand as others. And there have been plenty of artists who have viewed like the world of Batman or the DC universe through It's just dazzlingly gay lens. Joel Schumacher made Batman and Robin and Batman Forever after Tim Burton's first two Batman movies, and he like up and down the board is like, oh, Batman's super gay. Like he was all about it. Like he totally leaned into that. And if you go back and watch those movies again, like you could start to see things you didn't notice back in the 90s when we watched these movies for the first time. So the idea of somebody doing this is not bad. If anything, like I think it's really creative, but it's incredibly unauthorized, and Toronto Film Festival clearly does not want the heat. It's a charming name. I mean, it certainly generates an interesting headline. I'd probably like to see, I don't know, parts of it when it comes out. It doesn't. It also does not look like a very good movie, so I don't think a whole lot of it. But I don't know. Maybe there's a little bit of magic in there. Who knows? What we do know is Toronto International Film Festival is not going to see any of that magic. But in other news, Blade Runner 2099 is happening. What? It's like a sequel to Blade Runner 2049, or a series sequel being produced by Ridley Scott and greenlit over at Amazon Prime Video. Andy, did you see more Blade Runner coming down the line? I mean, these things historically don't do very well at the box office.
I mean, I was hoping they would. I love the world of Blade Runner, as do many other people. I've actually been following the Blade Runner comics, which actually go in Blade Runner 2029, 3039, or 2039, 2049. Those have been really well. So that world is still being mined for content, but I'm surprised that a whole series has been kind of greenlit. But that's kind of what's happening now. If you have a really successful film property that's really has a big world worth exploring, it's going to series on TV. Look at the Rings of Power, the Lord of the Rings new series on Amazon Prime, and this is also going to be on Amazon Prime. So that's one of the places that a lot of IP is going is to kind of a prestige TV series.
Fans of the show may remember way back when Andy and I watched Blade Runner 2049. We were both big fans of that new film.
Huge
we
fans.
both like the original as well. Huge fans. It is a sterling example of how to do a sequel well. It's really great. And Blade Runner's had a little bit of success, like Andy said, outside of the cinema. They've got comics. Blade Runner Black Lotus had a season on Netflix. But that's an animated series. I don't know if it got greenlit for a second series, and I haven't heard much about it since it came out. This, however, is intended to be live action. As far as I can tell, Ridley Scott's attached to it. And in name, this seems like a very explicit follow up to, Blade Runner 2049, jumping ahead another 50 years. I don't know what exactly the world of Blade Runner looks like then. I think part of what makes it so charming is how it's like retro technology from the 80s, but it's covered in grime. Everything's dirty and dusty in the world of Blade Runner.
It's kind of where cyberpunk came from.
Yeah, right. Like, yeah, big inspirations for things like cyberpunk, right? It leans into that detective noir kind of feel. I don't know what Blade Runner 2099 is going to look at, but we'll have to what it's going to look like, but we'll have to take a look at it when it comes out. Even though we don't do TV on this show, it sounds like cinematic television, and maybe that's worth talking about. Any other hot takes on new Blade Runner, Andy?
I'm really looking forward to it. I'm really looking forward to what kind of changes will happen. One of the things that the Blade Runner world has done really well is make significant changes in lore and what has happened in the world from film to film. The first one takes place in 2019. Blade Runner 2049, lots of things are different. There's been this big blackout to erase a bunch of records. There's a new Nexus model of replicants that are now more obedient and have been reintroduced back into the population as slave labor. So they make these updates really interesting. So I'm interested to see what does 50 years later in the Blade Runner world look like.
Keep it here on Offscript for more from Blade Runner. And if you haven't seen it, go check out Blade Runner 2049. It is really good stuff. I don't know where it's streaming. I will find out probably soon. One more story this week. $3 movie tickets are coming back. After National Cinema Day on September 3rd turned out record numbers across the country. Apparently, some other theaters are interested in chasing this down. Andy, what do you know about this story?
So National Cinema Day, which is kind of a manufactured holiday that happened over the Labor Day weekend, which is historically a very poor weekend at the movies. and they had tried this over in England actually to kind of do this cinema day with cheaper tickets. It was a huge success, and so they brought it over here to the States. And again, it was a huge success here. Massive amount of tickets sold on that Friday through Monday, Labor Day weekend, and they're looking to do it again, possibly next year, maybe on the same date, maybe on another holiday. But it's been a big success, and it's something that we can expect to see for years to come, maybe.
I think this is good. I thought the last time they did it was good. I think the next time they do it is good. Like anything that gets more people to the movies. And hey, what's wrong with the $3 movie ticket day? I think it's a perfectly reasonable price. You know, the studio still gets their cut. The theater makes a boatload off popcorn and drinks and all the concessions you'll buy because of your cheap tickets. Why not, man? Sure, they should do $3 movie ticket every 90 days. Like, sure, I love it. I think it's a great idea. I think it falls in line with how theaters have been positioning themselves after the introduction of things like Movie Pass with their monthly subscriptions. They're giving out free tickets more now than ever before. Like, hey man, why not? $3 movie tickets sounds great. Give an opportunity to go see Avatar again, or you know, next week's Don't Worry Darling, or God, Top Gun, which is still in theaters.
Oh my God.
How?
I think you can rent it at home now.
Yes, I think I will be able to stream it for free on the internet before I can. Well, I'm sure I could find a place to do
You'll
that.
be
now,
able to go ride the ride at Universal Studios, and it'll still be in theaters.
Yeah, and
We'll
Top Gun
Lego
Rooster
set.
will be coming out. Yeah, when this movie's going out. God.
This was the biggest day as far as in terms of admissions all year, which is a pretty impressive feat. Over 8 million people went to the movies on September 3rd. So it was a big success, and there weren't any new films out. This was relying on things like Top Gun Maverick, like the re-release of Spider-Man No Way Home, the more fun stuff edition, and anything else that was still out. So even without a big new release, it was a massive day at the movies.
Yeah, and what a day it was. Like, it is not every day you can get the three biggest movie chains in the world to come together and agree on price for one day, and it totally paid dividends. I like that they're going to do it again. I think it's great. Now, $3 movie ticket day, it rocks, and they should keep that going forever. They should knock it down to $2 if they can. $1 free. Anybody can go to the movies. Why not? Pie in the sky. One more update before we jump into our first review. While I'm thinking about it, Blade Runner 2049 is available to stream on HBO Max and Netflix. You should go check it out. Good. It is good stuff. But it may not be as good as our next feature. I'm excited to talk about this movie. So I'm going to be taking the summary on this. This year, right? X came out. Am I crazy?
Yeah.
God, how did these come out so close to that? Yes, in spring, earlier this year, Andy and I went and saw a horror movie with a good buddy of ours called X, an original horror movie from horror director Ty West about a group of travelers and filmmakers who are staying at a farmhouse out in, rural Texas when something goes awry and it becomes a bloody chop house, grindhouse horror movie. It entertained, delighted. We all thought it was really good. And the biggest surprise of X was at the end of the credits, there was a teaser trailer for a sequel film called Pearl from the same director, starring a few members of the same cast. We were skeptical then, I think, because X was so unique and good. And the idea that they quickly turned out a prequel shortly after production, before they closed down sets and turned off everything, even so insofar as shooting this prequel, writing it during the pandemic when they couldn't film X, is wild. And the idea that they just kind of turned out this sister movie was strange. But now Pearl is in theaters. We have seen it. Is it as good as X? Does it follow up? The movie is Pearl. So Pearl, like I said, is from director Ty West. His second feature this year is an anomaly. Pearl is the story of a young girl working on her parents' farm in like 1918, I think it's set. That's the year. Loves going into town to watch the silent movies and the talkies and the girls dance on screen. She wants to be a star someday. But Pearl has two parents who are incredibly overbearing, a very stern mother, and a father who is invalid. He's in a wheelchair and can't speak. and despite like her longing to get out and become something more like Dorothy in the Wizard of Oz, she just can't seem to get away, and this all goes awry when she develops a violent temper, I'll say, and we quickly descend into the Chop House horror madness that we saw earlier this year in X. It is a small cast, it is a small feature. Andy, what did you think of Pearl?
Man, I really enjoyed this, and I wasn't sure which way it would go because I was a big fan of X, and I was a little worried that this would maybe try and be the same film, just set 50 years before, but it really stands on its own. It's definitely complemented by it's the first movie X, but it's so much its own thing. It's just shot entirely differently. It looks like there's these bright yellows and reds. It's like Technicolor. It looks a lot like there's been a lot of comparisons to the Wizard of Oz. It has the same kind of old timey 1930s, 1940s sweeping score by Tyler Bates. It's just has a different feel, look, and it has similarities. There's similar themes and parallels to X, but it's different at the same time. That there's similar themes of like repressed sexuality, of kind of female entrapment within society, and these kind of different roles, and it's fascinating, and I was kind of engaged just the whole time, and you know where it's going kind of the whole way. There aren't like big surprises or big gotcha moments, but it's the journey to get there that's really fascinating.
Right. I think part of the problem with Pearl on its face is one, it lands firmly in a time when like society is pretty tired of prequels and sequels. And the idea that like, oh, there's a cheeky prequel we shot simultaneously with this movie you didn't know about called X, like is cool, but like ultimately it feels like it might be a little shallow. And additionally, uh Pearl as a character is not that deep in X. She is the old lady who lives at this house that all of these traveling kids get to shoot their little, porno film. X is really rad, by the way. You should check out X. X is great. So Pearl's not that deep. She's got a husband, and she's got a bit of an emotional center in X, but like she's also kind of an old psycho killer, so you don't really think a lot about it, right? Like you're not focused on her in X, you're focused on the other characters. This movie walks it back and says, no, 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 she's the star here. That's what she's going to be. This girl who wants so badly to get out of her small town and become something big. And uniquely, Mia Goth, who has her first screenwriting credit, helping Ty West write this movie and also starring, man, she dials it all the way up to 11, and she doesn't pull her foot off the gas once. And she is so good in this movie as this twisted up woman who just wants to be something more, like who just wants to get out, right? The dream every kid from every musical has ever had, right? A kid who's got an I Want song, like she just wants to be a star. And she just can't figure it out. And the trailer looks like it gives a lot away. And I think that's the other thing that might hurt this movie's box office returns. Like you see the trailer and you kind of think you know what's going on there. But I was really pleased to find that, like, while it is different from X. You can't walk in thinking it's just going to be the sequel or anything. It's got a really unique energy. There's something really cool happening in this movie, so I'm glad we have the opportunity to talk about it.
Yeah, her performance in this it's incredible. Like it's legitimately Oscar worthy. We'll see if it gets recognized.
There's no way. There's no way she should. Honestly, it probably nom worthy in my opinion, but I there's no way this gets a nom.
I was really surprised, and it's not all the time, but I was telling Zach after we had watched it that she could have turned it up to 8, and it would have been an all you need for the film. It would have gotten the job done, would have been great. But she goes to 11, think of the best monologues, the best pieces of acting you've ever seen. Like she goes there for several moments in this film, and it's incredible. Like absolutely. Yeah. There's a point where she has like a 6 to 7 minute monologue. That's incredible. She just has some really long scenes, and when she kind of loses her temper and goes over the top, it's just incredible pieces of acting, just yelling, crying, ugly crying, tears. It's incredible. It's amazing.
Yeah, it's so easy to write her character as just a violent person in a corner, right? Like, especially coming out of X, because that's what Pearl is in that movie. But instead, like, they go the opposite way, and they turn Pearl into this like stunningly tragic individual, who's just kind of a victim of her own trappings, I guess, who just can't escape this mess that she's made that just begins to snowball into a bigger and bigger problem. And by the time you get to the end, by the time you get to where we're headed with X, like, it kind of makes sense, but it's that extra layer. Like, that's what makes it work. Like that, I really think that's the gooey center to this movie. Along with, I should say, some of the visuals, which are simple but striking. I like I said, Ty West wrote this movie with Mia Goth during the pandemic, during quarantine, when they couldn't shoot X. They were locked down. They couldn't do anything, and he said, "Hey, I had this idea for kind of a prequel." They fleshed it out, and they opted to use the sets from X before they demolished them all. I think they shot X in New Zealand, I want to
Yep.
say, which is crazy because it totally passes for Texas. Maybe not so much in this movie. This one's a bit more whimsical and fantasy. The saturation's turned up a little bit in this one. Looks a little like Wizard of Oz, except obviously Wizard of Oz was black and white. It's going to be your kind of technicolor rainbow kind of movie. The sky is super blue and the grass is super green and the blood is super red,
Yeah.
and that's a big part of what's going on here. And everybody's wearing old school outfits. It's the early 1900s. It's time of influenza, which there's an interesting reflection of the pandemic when they shot the
Uh-huh.
film versus the people in this movie. Lots of people wearing masks. They're talking about, hey, you don't have the bug, do you? Like, it's great. I think the movie has a really cool setting, and it creates like a really refreshing but close to home feeling with like the first film, where you're getting the same house and like the same barn and the same bunkhouse. That stuff's really neat.
Yeah, it's really incredible that they were able to use the exact same sets and still make a very different movie. X is very much a kind of classic slasher movie. Teens getting killed, killer on the loose. This is more in the veins of something like Misery, Stephen King's work, with Annie Wilkes, played by I can't.
Kathy Bates.
Thank you. She
Yeah,
won
got it.
she won an Oscar for that. It's that kind of movie. It's someone slowly going over there, someone slowly losing their mind, turning to murder to solve their problems, and kind of revealing other horrors within. And you feel for Pearl, because she is really trapped she's trapped on this farm. She has this overbearing mother. Her father is kind of had a stroke. It's insinuated he's had a stroke from having Spanish flu. She's been married. She got married to this American GI who's she hasn't seen in years because he's been overseas fighting the Great War. So she can't even like remarry to anyone that she sees. It's really, she's frustrated in her lot in life, and she really can't stand it. She wants to do something about it, and I think that that's something that a lot of people can relate to.
Yeah, like this buildup of like ambition and temptation, the frustrations of having like a mother who just will not let off the gas as far as like being stern is concerned. Her mom is like so particular in this movie. The dad who doesn't talk, but like he just can't express himself at all. The husband who's away. Like, all of that builds into the person that Pearl is going to become. And I think what's clever is the subtext that's written under that. Like, the idea that her husband is away and she meets a local projectionist at the movie theater who's really charming and handsome, and she starts to pine for him but feels like she can't. Like, all of that adds something that like is not present in the trailer, and that's the stuff that works. Because I was a little skeptical going in. Like, I it just seems like a movie that would not normally hit the big screen. Like, it seems like a movie I would go watch at like the local indie Cineplex, and then we'd talk about on the show. We'd say it's bold cinema, move right past it. I love that this is in theaters. Like, you can just go watch this anywhere. It's this level of like, I don't know. It's a step past elevated horror, right? I want to compare it to something like Barbarian or Malignant or X. Like, this kind of new space that horror is traveling into, of like the extreme and the art house turned back on itself to make something like bright red blood totally work, right? And present horror in stark daylight, which is a lot of what this movie does. People get killed like in the middle of a sunny field in the middle of the day, like. And it presents itself in a space that like I don't know a lot of other horror movies are doing, and I think it's really neat.
Yeah, like you said, like we said earlier, it's this very bright world. It reminds me a lot of like Pollyanna, these 19 or 60s Disney films with kind of
Yeah.
this bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, naive ingenue, which is totally what Pearl is. You know, you almost expect her to break into song at the very beginning because she's like talking with her animals. She's like, "Hello, Mr. Cow, it's me. I can't wait to
Yeah.
see you." You know, and then but then the more you get to know about her life, it's terrible. Like has this really abusive, overbearing mother who controls basically her every movement, and there's just so much. She's so limited and stuck on the farm. And
Before
it's
Go ahead.
yeah, it's so different in a lot of ways, and still, you know, it's not kind of jump scary. It's not that kind of horror. It's just it's very disturbing, and it's a lot about mood and a lot about like scenes that will haunt you for days to come, without having cheap scares.
Yeah, like Ty West talked about in an interview his kind of inspiration from something like a Hitchcock movie, which this movie in a lot of ways feels like. The farmhouse on a hill by itself starts to feel an awful lot like the Bates Motel from Psycho, right? Even Pearl's like general demeanor throughout the film. At one point, she's wearing her hair up in a bun and a dress. She looks just like Norman Bates dressed as his mother. The mental scare, right? Like the buildup of horror, like over time, is what this movie does well. I do think it's not without issues. I thought it suffered a bit in pacing in its first two acts. There was a bit very explicitly in the middle where I told Andy after we saw it, I was like, that was the moment I realized I was bored sitting in the movie theater. It comes around by act three, though. Overall, I was really pleased with the package, and I think a lot of that pacing is assisted by visuals, Mia Goth's performance, and like Andy said, the music, which is super good in this movie, and it's like very insistent. It's like an old orchestra. It plays throughout a lot of it. Very cinematic. Who is the composer on this?
Tyler Bates.
Tyler Bates.
He scored 300.
Okay, all right. No slouch, Mr. Bates. Yeah, I wouldn't put it past him.
That's what I know him best for, and some other he's done a number of other well-known scores.
Any other thoughts on this one before recommendations, Andy?
I think I'm ready.
Andy, would you recommend Pearl?
Absolutely. If you're a fan of horror, if you're a fan of new horror and always want to see what's new in the slasher killer genre, definitely go see it. It's fun. It's disturbing. Has a great female protagonist. Incredible performance from Mia Goth, who is becoming a horror icon in her own right. Especially if you've seen X, definitely check this out. I want to go back and rewatch X to see like parallels and different ways the movies connect as well. But really highly recommend.
Same here. I think Pearl's a ton of fun. It's not for everybody. I wouldn't recommend it to like your parents to go see it or anything unless they want to see something particularly off the wall and a little grisly. But it's cool, man. Yeah, these two movies make for a really good double feature. They got a really unique energy to them. I am looking forward to Maxine. That's coming next. There's a teaser at the end of the Pearl credits. I was bummed. It's not much more than the one we've already seen after Toronto International Film Festival. If you've seen that one online, that's what you're getting. Hopefully we get some footage soon. I hope that is able to meet the same quality of these two, but so far Ty West is 2-0 here. Like if he can pull it out, I think he's produced a brilliant horror trilogy in less than 2 years, which is wild.
Yeah.
Can't wait to see Maxine. And with that, we should probably move on to our next segment. Andy, you want to intro this for me?
It's time for the trailer park. So we're going to be talking about a couple of new trailers that just came out this week. The very first one is called Decision to Leave, and this is the latest film from Park Chan-wook, who famously made Old Boy back in 2002 or 3, around there. Has made a number of other incredible Korean films. His last big film was The Handmaiden, which was kind of a period piece and very long. It's a long movie, very twisted. He has a very unique style, very visceral kind of violence. This latest film is based on a murder, or not a murder, a death that happens on a mountain. It's a climbing accident. The detectives are sent in to see what happened, and they meet the dead man's wife, who immediately becomes a suspect, and also the the detective kind of falls in love with her at the same time while he's supposed to be investigating this death. So we don't really know too much more than that. I thought that it's interesting. The wife is played by Tong Wei, who's actually a Chinese actress, and in her character is Chinese in the movie in Korea. So there's extra suspicion because she's also a foreigner. She's not a native Korean person. But I'm a huge fan of Park Chan Wook. Super excited for this. Zach, what do you think?
So I hadn't seen this trailer up until just before the show. Andy had sent it over a while back, and I thought, oh yeah, I'll watch that one, and then just slipped by. We're getting into Oscar season, right? We're getting into like lots of bold cinema, and so I'm glad he brought this one up so I could actually go check it out again. Dude, this trailer looks super good. It looks like a really good trailer. There's a lot of really pretty shots in it. I like the tone. I don't really know where it's headed. The review clips they show in there are interesting. Somebody compares it to Parasite. Another person says it's Insidious. One person says it's the best romance you'll see all year. I don't know what's going on in Decision to Leave. I think the title needs a little work. Maybe that's a translation thing. Whatever it is,
Probably.
the movie looks rad, and I'm excited to watch it. Yeah, I think Decision to Leave looks like good stuff.
Yeah, I can't vocalize how excited I am
Yeah,
for this movie, and it's hard to really say that his visual style is very unique. No one in the States makes films quite like him, and he loves this line between like horror, violence, and romance. All his films kind of tread that line. If you've seen the Vengeance trilogy or the vampire film Thirst, or his American debut film called Stoker, which starred Nicole Kidman, Matthew Good, and Mia Wasikowska, also had treaded that same line. The Handmaiden, not to be confused with The Handmaid's Tale. The Handmaiden also does that. So he's one of those directors that I just get so excited anytime he puts out new work, and that comes out sometime in October. This says October 14th. So we'll definitely be catching that next month. The other film, this just came out today that we're going to talk about, is Hellraiser, the new remake of the original 1987 classic, which is going to be coming out on Hulu on October 7th. We finally get a trailer for this. We get to see Jamie Clayton as Pinhead, the Cenobite, and we get to see other Cenobites, and we get a look at a lot of things from the original film. If you're not familiar, the original Hellraiser surrounds this puzzle box that kind of been passed down through the ages, and if you solve it, you are exposed to pleasures and pain of all kinds, and eventually these creatures called the Cenobites come to collect your soul after you open the box. And there's it's a horror classic from 1987. It's being remade, and we get to see a lot of that same iconic imagery. We see the puzzle box, we see the chains coming kind of from out of nowhere, we see the Cenobites reimagined, that we see the Chatterer, we see Pinhead, we see a new one I think called the Mask. I'm super excited about this. Zach, what are your thoughts?
I am a little skeptical about Hellraiser. I'm excited. I'm tentatively excited, but man, you literally can't count on one hand how many times somebody's put out a trailer for a Hellraiser movie that looked good and then was bad. Hellraiser is like a really cool franchise, like, and it's held up by like a Wes Craven film at the center. Was it? I think Wes Craven actually did it. I know he wrote it.
Barker.
Clive Barker. I'm sorry, Wes Craven. Clive Barker. Clive Barker. It's uniquely its own, and I don't know if this one's gonna quite reach like the lofty heights of the original, but I like this reboot look. It's a good looking trailer. I'm excited to check it out. Hulu on October 7th. That's gonna be Hellraiser.
Yeah,
and that's yeah, go ahead.
Just one quick thing is that there's also a Hellraiser series that's supposed to be being made on HBO. So there's a competing property that's eventually going to come out as well. So that'll be interesting to see as well. Totally separate projects.
Have any of the Hellraiser movies like run with that plot line of like a character coming back from hell and like slowly trying to reinvigorate themselves. Like it's like 1999's The Mummy, right? Like the same gag.
Yeah. So there are 9 Hellraiser movies.
Good God.
Most of them straight to DVD.
Yeah.
There are kind of the first 2 are the most well known, and then it kind of goes off the rails. There, I haven't seen anything past the first 2, honestly.
Right.
But yeah, that is the gag. Someone trying to recreate themselves. That's what happens in
I
the
thought
first one.
I thought that was such a great journey into the crazy in the first Hellraiser, because you have a character who's witnessed these things and visibly reflects the place they've come from, like no skin, slimy, like just horrifying stuff, man. Like God kept me up at night when I was a kid. I hope this one's got a little bit of that juice. Like I like, yeah, the Cenobites look good. All right, sorry, I'm done talking about Hellraiser. I want to see it. That's what I'm saying. I'm a little skeptical, but I hope it's great. And with that, we should move into our final episode. Not a lot of trailers this week. Final episode, final review. Good Lord. Andy's going to be taking the summary on this one, thankfully, while I get my words together. Andy, please take it away.
See How They Run. This is the latest film from Tom George. This is a comedy whodunit, starring Saoirse Ronan and Sam Rockwell. This is kind of a subversion of the whodunit, the Agatha Christie type films. It starts out very similar to how those do. There's a murder in the beginning. Everyone gets gathered in a room, but it quickly goes on its own way and starts kind of doing very different things from what this genre usually does. It takes place in 1953 in London. There is the play The Mousetrap, which is another Agatha Christie whodunit, which is actually in real life the longest running like play ever. It's been running for like 70 years or something. And so this is kind of centered around that. The director, played by Adrian Brody, ends up dead within first kind of 15 minutes, and our 2 police officers are on a mission to find out who done it, and they're running all over town, interrogating different people. He's made a lot of enemies within this play, the writer, the producer, other jilted people. So they're running all over town trying to get clues. Our main characters, Constable Stalker, which is
Inspector Stoppard and Constable Stalker.
Yeah,
it's very similar names, I think on purpose.
The constable is played by Saoirse Ronan, and she's a young, kind of bright-eyed, new police officer. She's excited about the job. She wants to do well. She needs some training. She has this little notepad. She's writing everything down all the time. That's done to the annoyance of Stoppard, played by Sam Rockwell, who's he's a veteran of the force. He is also a little bit drunk and isn't super excited to have this green sidekick, but kind of has to take her on anyways. And we get a lot of really funny moments kind of throughout the film, lots of little gags, very self-aware. So that's our film. I realize I've been talking for a while now. Zach, what do you think?
I like this movie. See How They Run is a story for storytellers. It's a movie about making movies in its own way. It's not actually about making movies, although there is a director in it, played by Adrian Brody, who is very good in this movie. I love Adrian Brody. I hope he gets more work. I don't know what he's doing when he's not doing TV and theater, I guess. I like this movie. It's a whodunit. It's not great. It's not a great film, but it's a good one, and I think that's important. I don't see a lot of movies like this at the movie theater anymore. Normally it's going to be something that either totally swings for the fences and goes really big, like Avengers, right, or a lot of other Marvel movies, or it'll be something really bombastic and different like Pearl or The Lost City starring Sandra Bullock. This is not quite a giant budget, and it's not quite super different, but it's different enough, and I like it. I like Saoirse Ronan in this. I think she steals every scene she's in. Sam Rockwell, I'm a little bit more lukewarm on. It took me half the movie to figure out what he was doing because he's so low energy. And then as you find out more about his character, you come to understand, oh, he's doing like an Eddie Valiant thing from Who Framed Roger Rabbit. He's like this torn up, washed up inspector who's frustrated with the world and himself, and he's got a different energy than everybody else. But ultimately, like, I think it's a charming cast. I don't know a lot of them, but it takes its time. It makes its jokes and it gets a few laughs. See How They Run is simple, and I don't mind simple at the movies. Simple is not a bad movie make. So where do we start talking about this thing?
Well, one of the things I wanted to talk about was just the style of the film, which I really enjoyed, like the way it's shot and like the cinematography. Very interesting, almost like comic book panels a lot of times where the screen is split in half and there's something happening on the top half juxtaposed with the bottom half, or there will be four quadrants of different things happening. So there's a lot of real interest and a lot of, I think, real kind of original touch to the direction and cinematography. And that's one of the things that kind of keeps it interesting, because you're right, it does, it's not a great film, but it's solidly made. It has good performances, and the style is one of the things that really stuck out to me.
Yeah, I'm a big whodunit fan, and most recently at the cinema, I think whodunits have been given a shot in the arm from, you know, Ryan Johnson making Knives Out, which is really good. Not no. Whereas I said this movie's not great, but it's good. Knives Out, I might say, is great. Like, Knives Out is really tremendous. So walking into this, it's hard not to kind of have that in the back of your mind, like, hey, you know, I have an idea of what this movie's going to be, and See How They Run addresses that right up front with a monologue from Adrian Brody, film director in the film, who explains that uh, he doesn't want the movie he's making in the film to be like other whodunits. He wants it to be different, have some action and some punch and some pizzazz. He wants it to be sexy. And meanwhile, the playwright in the film, played by David Oyelowo, is the exact opposite. He wants it to be thoughtful. He wants it to be Agatha Christie, characters talking in rooms. That's what makes a good whodunit. And that sets up the framing for this film to address you, the audience, and saying that, hey, the creators of See How They Run have looked at whodunits and they know what they're doing, and they're trying to do something a little different. And I think that's important. That helps it stand out. That gives this film its own identity. Just like Andy said, with like the split screen views that happen, they even go to 3 and 4 screens at one point. I think that comes from director Tom George. He's done almost all TV before this. Same with the writer, Mark Chappell. Same thing. Almost all television, very little feature film work between the two of these. And the writing is sharp. It's not always perfect, but it's funny. There's a lot of really good quips. There's a lot of really good opportunities for characters to have little moments interacting with one another. And I think that stuff's important in a character drama like a whodunit, right? You got to have unique individuals. Everybody needs to have a pretty unique silhouette. Everyone's got to have a solid alibi. And most importantly, somebody's got to be the murderer. And I think See How They Run does a pretty good job of navigating those waters. It's not perfect, but overall, like, it's a fun feature. Yeah, and I think it gets across, at least in its writing, I think, well enough for me.
Yeah, it's a fun little mid-budget film, and you're right. We do have really unique characters. We have Adrian Brody as kind of the American swaggering director, and who's trying to get this the Mousetrap also made into a film, and that has a big.
Hey guys, another week at the podcast, another week of having technical issues. We got to get these things sorted out. Andy looks like he cut off stream, so I'm just going to jump in where he left off with our cast. Adrian Brody. Adrian Brody. My God, I'm falling apart this week. Plays a wonderful film director. David Oyelowo plays a playwright in the feature. Harris Dickinson plays a actor who's our lead in our play. We've got a couple other actors in there. Petula Spencer is played by Ruth Wilson, who is really wonderful in this movie. Last time I saw her was His Dark Materials on HBO. She plays the owner of the theater that the play is running in. You get a couple other characters, a butler, an usher. You get an angry spouse here and there. Ultimately, like, all of these characters make for a pretty good backdrop, I think, of everybody in the feature. What they don't necessarily make for is compelling alibis. Not everybody in this movie gets the time they need, I think, to present a really sterling picture of who actually done it. And I think it's a bit of a surprise at the end, who is the person who has actually done it at the end of the movie. And I think that's just because this film is not so concerned with like the core mystery as much as is building a rapport between our two leads, Saoirse Ronan and Sam Rockwell, who are both really tremendous as these two two inspectors, or inspector and a constable, who are at opposite end of their careers. Saoirse Ronan is up and coming. She's working on her little notebook, right? She's trying to pass the sergeant's exam in just a month. And Inspector Stoppard, meanwhile, like is a little drunk on the job. He's got a limp from the war, and he's having he's just having a time of it, and he does not want to put up with this young girl who's very quick to jump to conclusions and assume that somebody might be the crook when they may in fact not be the crook. The cast does a good job of holding all that up. I think the real stars are going to be Saoirse, David, Adrian, and Sam Rockwell. I think all really run away with it. But ultimately, like, I think what I like most about this movie, outside of wait a second, he's back, and he's back on the
I'm back here. Sorry.
It's all right. I just got through walking through the cast. I was just about to jump into aesthetics, the look of this movie, because that's really striking. There's a lot of really fantastic wallpapers, paints, sets. The houses in this movie look really cool. The street corners look really good. I'm impressed at how good this movie looks. I think they did a really good job getting some set dressing and costuming to make everybody look and feel as if they're not in a studio. They are actually at this big, grand 100-year-old theater where this play, The Mousetrap, is running. I think that stuff works really well aesthetically. Really good visuals.
Yeah, they make good use of buildings and things from like the 1950s. There's a lot of hotels that I imagine they scouted what was around in 1950. That's where we're gonna shoot our film. Inside the hotels look really nice. The theater where the Mousetrap is playing is an interesting piece, and again, it's as colorful as our characters. 5 or 6 people in the cast, all important to this film as well.
Yeah, they absolutely are. Let's see. I explained, and it's just to catch you up, Andy. I explained a little bit that I felt like the writing does not actually focus so much on the who done it, because the mystery is not particularly predictable, and that's an interesting feature of, I think, the modern who done it. Knives Out does the same thing. I've got a friend or a friend of a friend, I should say, who as big mystery writer reader, and they were frustrated with Knives Out, just like this movie, because they said it wasn't predictable by the end. You couldn't predict who did it and why, and any good who done it, the audience should be able to get there. But See How They Run isn't as much focused on that as much as it is like our kind of two characters and kind of this bumbling experience they have finding their way to the mystery. It's a little, again, it reminds me of Who Framed Roger Rabbit. Like, it's not so much about who killed Eddie Valiant's brother. It's about Roger Rabbit and Eddie Valiant and the two of them going on this it's about the journey, not the destination. And that's what's going on and See How They Run. I think it's important to look at it through that lens.
Right. I think like you said, the writing is kind of the weakest part of this. It's interesting, and like there are a lot of good jokes. There are some funny moments, but the mystery doesn't really pull you in. It's not mysterious enough. It doesn't pull you in kind of different directions the way something like Knives Out does. And with Knives Out, you actually learn, quote unquote, who done it pretty early on, but there's other mysteries to be solved and things to be explained and things to happen throughout the course of the film.
Yeah. It's a meta film, very surprisingly meta. When I saw it, Buddy compared it to something like Adaptation, the Charlie Kaufman film, specifically that scene when Nicolas Cage starts writing the film that you're watching in the movie. He starts screenwriting the script to Adaptation. This movie doesn't quite get that far down the line, but it definitely takes some time to comment on the genre, to talk about whodunits, to talk about murder mysteries. Agatha Christie is a surprisingly prominent feature in this film that I didn't expect. And if you've seen a whodunit, you probably know who Agatha Christie is, because she, modernized them, made them popularized them. That's what I was looking for. Overall, I think it's a pretty complete package. I wish it was, I don't know. I wish it had a little bit more something. I can't quite put my finger on what it is. All in all, it adds up to a good portrait of a whodunit. It's just not quite, I don't know. It didn't quite get over the line for me. I didn't know if you felt the same way, Andy.
No, I absolutely did. Like I said, there's a lot of things that work really well. The cast are leads, the style and cinematography, a lot of the jokes. But then yeah, the overall narrative just isn't as interesting as it could be, isn't as engaging as it kind of needs to be to knock it up there with something more like Murder on the Orient Express or Knives Out.
It's true. Early in the feature, I definitely thought I was going to be excited to compare this to Death on the Nile and say how much better this was. But they're two very distinctly different movies, and it's not that easy actually to hold them both up to a lens. You'd think, oh yeah, who done it in the early 1900s? How could you go wrong? But like, no, this one is kind of its own. It carves its own space a little bit, and while that carving is rough, I think it's important, and I think that's a good thing. So. Um, I don't know. I think it's about it. For any other thoughts or recommendations, Andy?
I'm ready.
Andy, would you recommend See How They Run?
Yeah, I would, but probably save it for streaming. It's not something you need to run out and see in theaters, but it is a fun little movie. But you can probably wait till it's available on streaming service in a couple of months.
I'm in the same boat. I like this movie a bit. I don't like it a ton, but it's fine. It does not offend. I'll say. I have very few bad things to say about it. I think it's an easy watch at 98 minutes. God, I wish more movies were 98 minutes. When this comes to a streaming service, and it will, that's where I think you should check it out. That'll be great. Sit down, grab a glass of wine, hang out, watch, See How They Run with your
100
favorite person.
minutes.
It's not a bad feature. And that about wraps our show for the week. Quick one this week, Andy. What are we watching next week?
So at long last, I feel like we've been waiting forever for this to come out. Is Don't Worry, Darling, the follow-up for Olivia Wilde, who directed Booksmart several years ago, that teen comedy. This Don't Worry, Darling stars Florence Pugh, Olivia Wilde herself, Gemma Chan, Harry Styles, Chris Pine. And I'm not going to get into the plot, but because that's the big film that we'll be watching in theaters only this weekend. And then we're going to see what else to kind of complement that. But we did want to let everyone know that Avatar, the original 2009 James Cameron film, is being re-released in IMAX and in theaters starting this weekend. So if you want to check that out before the Avatar sequel comes out at Christmas, that's going to be playing this weekend. Also, we might catch that. Well, we might not. It's 3 hours long, and it's hard to carve that much time out in the theater in just the weekend. But that's what's coming out this weekend.
Yeah, I worry the rest of the world is not as like meme excited as I am about Avatar coming back out, because I cannot convince hardly anybody to go watch that with me in theaters again. Everybody's like, "Oh yeah, Avatar's back out." Oh yeah, it's like 3.5 hours, right? Like, yeah, oh yeah, it's a long one, man. James Cameron's no slouch, so we'll find something else to watch. In the meantime, if you enjoyed the show today, I feel like we're doing here on Off Script, the biggest thing you can do to help us over at Off Script is just subscribe to the show on your favorite podcasting platform: iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, iHeartMedia. We're on all of them, and you can follow us on there for audio versions of the show. If you want to watch our video version of the show, see our beautiful faces, experience our technical difficulties, you can find us on Facebook, where we live stream the show every Tuesday at 5 p.m. Central. We're on YouTube, where we upload our live streams, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. We're on all those places, and you can follow us, and that's all great. But if you want to do us a real solid, just subscribe to the show. Get new episodes of Off Script delivered straight to your phone. You can also leave us a rating and review. That'd be stellar as well, but that's extra credit. Maybe not. We won't worry about that this week. Let's just subscribe. Next week we'll do that. All right, we'll push that off. From all of us at Off Script, the home of bold cinema, I'm Zach Lewis,
And I'm Dr. Draper.
thanks for watching.